Brave soldier risks his life to save a K9 German Shepherd. Then something shocking happens. He didn't think twice. When everyone else held back, when the mission turned into chaos, and when flames rose around the abandoned K9, this soldier ran into the danger. Not for glory, not for orders, but for a German Shepherd no one else would save. What happened next left everyone speechless and changed the soldier's life forever. This isn't just a story about war or duty. It's about the unbreakable bond between a mite and a dog, and the miracle that followed an act of pure courage. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss an inspiring story like this one. Because what you're about to hear will remind you why loyalty, bravery, and compassion still matter in this world. Private First Class Jordan Hayes wasn't new to danger. At 28, with 3 deployments behind him, he'd seen the worst sides of war: sandstorms that blinded, sniper fire that came without warning, and the ache of losing people you never thought you'd have to bury. But nothing ever prepared him for what happened that morning in Al Kharif. Their mission had been simple: sweep and secure a half-abandoned village on the outskirts of the desert. A tip-off had come in about hidden weapons, and Jordan's unit was tasked with clearing the buildings and confirming it was safe. The air was thick with dust and silence, the kind that didn't feel right. Jordan moved cautiously, rifle up, every step deliberate. The heat beat down on his helmet, sweat trickled down his back, and his eyes scanned every rooftop, every shadow. His partner, Staff Sergeant Callahan, moved just ahead of him, barking commands to the rest of the team through the radio. They had nearly finished sweeping the last alley when it happened. A blast shook the ground. Jordan's ears rang. His vision blurred. He hit the dirt, heart hammering, lungs struggling for air. Someone shouted his name. He couldn't tell who, but through the chaos, one sound pierced everything else. A bark. High-pitched, desperate. He blinked hard and pushed himself up onto his elbows. Across the alley, where the explosion had torn through part of a low building, he saw movement. Dust swirled in the air, and then he saw it, a dark shape limping, trying to crawl out from under collapsed debris. It was a German Shepherd, a military K9, muzzle scratched, paw bloody, eyes wide with panic. "Rico," someone whispered behind him. Jordan turned. It was Specialist Duran, pale, bleeding from a cut above his eyebrow. That's Sergeant Connor's dog. He was with him in the building. Jordan looked back. Flames were licking up the side of the structure now. He could feel the heat from where he stood. The place was going to collapse. "No one's coming out of there," Duran added, voice flat. Jordan didn't speak. He just ran. He heard shouts behind him, orders to stop, to wait for backup, but he didn't listen. All he could think about was the look in the dog's eyes, that pure, raw terror. He couldn't let Rico die alone like that. As he reached the rubble, smoke filled his throat. He dropped to his knees and pulled at charred wood and concrete, ignoring the way it burned his palms. The German Shepherd whimpered again, lower this time. "I got you, buddy," Jordan muttered. "Just hang on." He found the edge of a broken beam trapping the dog's back leg and wedged his shoulder under it. It wouldn't budge. He looked around wildly and spotted a bent metal pipe. Using it for leverage, he jammed it under the beam and heaved with everything he had. It moved, just enough. Rico yelped and scrambled forward, collapsing into Jordan's lap, panting heavily. His fur was hot, and Jordan could feel the dog trembling against him. Then, another sound. A groan. Jordan froze. He turned his head toward the back of the room and saw him. Sergeant Connor. Half buried under a shattered desk, barely conscious, one hand reaching weakly toward the light. "Oh my God," Jordan breathed. He had come in for the dog. But now there was more at stake. Smoke thickened, the walls creaked, and Jordan knew he had seconds. He looked at Rico, then back at Connor. "Stay with me," he whispered to both. And somehow, some way, he started pulling. Jordan had faced 1,000 split-second decisions before. Where to shoot, when to run, how to survive. But nothing ever felt like this. Not when the building was seconds from collapsing. Not when smoke clawed at his lungs and 2 lives hung in the balance. One hand gripped Rico's collar, the other wrapped around Sergeant Connor's shoulder. The weight of both pulled at him, like gravity itself was daring him to let go. He wouldn't. The beam behind them cracked loudly, snapping him back to reality. "Come on, move," Jordan gritted through clenched teeth. He dragged Connor inch by inch, Rico limping alongside, his breaths shallow and rapid. The fire roared louder now, feeding on the dry wood and broken walls. Every second was a warning. Jordan felt the heat behind his back and the sting of ash in his eyes. He could barely see, but he didn't stop. "Almost there," he muttered, more to himself than to them. Connor coughed, a raspy, pained sound. "You should have left me." "Not a chance," Jordan snapped. "We don't leave anyone, man or dog." He reached the doorway just as another explosion rocked the structure. Something electrical, maybe. The blast flung debris into the hallway, but Jordan ducked low, shielding Connor with his body. Rico let out a startled yelp, ears flattened. Jordan pushed forward, using his shoulder to ram the last door open. Blinding sunlight poured in, and for a second, he had to squint against it. And then, he was outside. Shouts, running boots, medics. Arms reached out to take Connor from him, and he let go, reluctantly. Rico collapsed at his feet, tongue out, chest heaving. "Medic!" Jordan shouted. "He's burned! He needs help!" The chaos blurred around him. Someone pressed a wet cloth to his face, trying to clean the soot. Someone else handed him water, but he couldn't stop looking at Rico, who was now being lifted gently onto a stretcher by a K9 handler. "He's gonna make it," the handler said, catching Jordan's eye. "You did good, man." Jordan swallowed hard. He was alone in there. "You weren't," the man replied. Hours passed. Connor was in critical condition but stable. Rico, despite burns and a sprained leg, would recover. But the story had already begun to ripple through the base. People kept stopping Jordan. "You ran into a burning building. For a dog?" "He's not just a dog," Jordan kept saying. "He's a soldier." Later that evening, Jordan stood outside the field hospital, the desert wind cooler now, as night began to fall. He leaned against the railing, replaying every second in his head. The smoke, the fear, the sound of Rico's paws against the concrete. "You all right?" came a voice from behind. It was Lieutenant Granger. Jordan nodded. "Yeah." "You disobeyed orders." Jordan stiffened. Granger didn't flinch. "You risked your life, twice. You broke protocol. You could have been killed." "I know." "And yet," the lieutenant added, softer now, "you saved both of them. You made a call most wouldn't." Jordan looked down. "I couldn't let him die. Either of them." Granger nodded. "You didn't." He pulled something from his pocket, a small metal tag, singed and dirty. "Rico's ID. Found this near the wreckage," he said. "Thought you should have it." Jordan took it gently. The metal was still warm. He turned it over in his palm, the dog's name etched in scratched lettering. "You returning to stateside soon?" Granger asked. Jordan shrugged. "Supposed to be." Granger looked at him for a moment, then said, "Rico's handler, Sergeant Connor, won't be back on duty. They're going to retire the dog." Jordan glanced up. "What happens to him?" "Usually, shelter. Maybe adoption by another soldier. But Rico doesn't do well with strangers." Jordan didn't hesitate. "I'll take him." Granger smiled. "I thought you might say that." That night, Jordan sat in the quiet of the recovery tent, watching Rico sleep. The shepherd was bandaged, but peaceful now. Safe. And as Jordan leaned back, exhaustion pulling at him, he realized something. He hadn't just saved Rico's life. Rico had saved his too. 3 weeks later, Jordan stepped off the plane at Fort Sam Houston with a duffel over his shoulder, and Rico at his side. The German shepherd still limped slightly, his back leg healing slower than the rest. But his ears were alert, eyes sharp, and tail swayed gently as he sniffed the Texas air like he knew this was the beginning of something new. For Jordan, it didn't feel like a homecoming. Sure, he was stateside again. The desert dust was gone, replaced by the smell of barbecue and the hum of cicadas. But something had shifted inside him, something he didn't know how to name. He hadn't slept properly since the rescue. Nights came with flashes of fire, of collapsed ceilings, of Rico's bark echoing through smoke. He didn't talk about it. Not to his mom when she called, not to his buddies from the unit, and certainly not to the VA counselor they assigned him. But he did talk to Rico. In the quiet hours of early morning, while sipping cold coffee on the porch. In the afternoons when they walked the trails behind his modest rental. He spoke softly, sometimes just a few words, sometimes whole paragraphs. Rico never judged. He just listened, head tilted, eyes locked onto Jordan like he understood every word. And maybe he did. Jordan learned Rico didn't like thunderstorms. The dog would pace, ears back, eyes wide, until Jordan sat beside him and held his collar. He also learned Rico had an odd obsession with tennis balls. He'd dig them out from under furniture and carry them around like trophies. But what Jordan noticed most was how Rico never strayed too far from him. Always 2 steps behind, like a shadow that chose to stay. One evening, Jordan brought Rico to the local dog park. It was quiet, only a few families playing fetch or tossing frisbees. At first, Rico stayed close, cautious. But eventually, he ran. Free, ears back, tongue out. Jordan smiled for the first time in weeks, until the screaming started. A car backfired just outside the park gate, sharp and loud. It sounded exactly like a gunshot. Jordan hit the ground before he even registered it. Face in the dirt, fists clenched, his breath caught, vision blurred. And Rico, he bolted. By the time Jordan scrambled to his feet, Rico was gone. "Rico!" he shouted, panic rising in his throat. "Rico!" People stared. A woman tried to approach him, but he waved her off. He ran down the sidewalk, heart pounding, calling the dog's name again and again. Memories hit him like a truck. Smoke, fire, Rico trapped and screaming. He couldn't lose him. Not now, not here. A mile down, near the edge of a drainage ditch, he saw a dark shape. "Rico?" Jordan breathed, stumbling toward it. The German shepherd sat still, staring at the water, body tense. Jordan slowed down, afraid to startle him. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. "It's just me." Rico didn't move. Jordan crouched nearby. "You okay?" After a long moment, Rico looked at him. His eyes were glassy, distant, like he was back in that burning building. Jordan reached out, hand trembling. "Come here." Rico hesitated, then stepped forward and placed his paw in Jordan's hand. Jordan let out a shaky breath and pulled him into a hug, right there in the dirt. They stayed like that a long time. Later that night, back at home, Jordan sat on the floor while Rico lay beside him, head on his thigh. The room was silent, except for the occasional creak of the old house. "I thought I lost you today," Jordan whispered. "But it wasn't just you, was it?" Rico didn't move, but his tail tapped the floor twice. Soft, steady. Jordan leaned his head back and closed his eyes. He didn't need answers. He didn't need therapy manuals or medals or words. He just needed this. One man, one dog, and the silent promise that they'd get through it together. Jordan never thought he'd see Sergeant Connor again. After the explosion, Connor had been airlifted out and transferred to a military hospital in Virginia. Rumors swirled that he'd lost partial movement in his left side and had been honorably discharged. But no one really knew for sure, at least not until the letter arrived. It was short, just a few lines. Heard you brought Rico back with you. I'd like to see him, if that's okay. Connor. Jordan sat with it for an hour, the paper trembling slightly between his fingers. He looked at Rico, asleep on the living room rug, one paw twitching in a dream. The thought of handing him back, giving him up, tightened something in his chest. But this wasn't about ownership. Rico wasn't a possession. He was a partner. And Connor had once been his whole world. So Jordan packed a bag, loaded Rico into the truck, and drove 12 hours to a rehab center just outside Richmond. The building was clean, white, and filled with the hum of machines and soft-spoken nurses. Jordan hated it instantly. Connor was in a wheelchair, thinner than Jordan remembered, but still sharp-eyed. He was sitting by a window when Jordan entered, a worn photo album resting on his lap. When Rico saw him, he stopped cold. His ears went up. His tail twitched once. Then he moved, slowly, cautiously, until he was right in front of Connor. They stared at each other for a long time. Then Rico leaned forward and rested his head on Connor's knee. Connor let out a shaky breath. His hand, still scarred and stiff, moved to stroke Rico's fur. "Hey, partner," he said softly. Jordan turned away for a second, pretending to look at the wall. The room suddenly felt too full. "He's doing good?" Connor asked eventually. Jordan nodded. "Yeah, he's healing." Took a while to get him to trust again. Connor gave a small, knowing smile. "You too, huh?" Jordan chuckled. "Something like that." They talked for a while, about old missions, dumb pranks their unit used to pull, the food they both hated in the mess hall. And as the sun started to dip behind the trees outside, Connor finally said what Jordan had feared from the beginning. "I know he's yours now. He's bonded to you." Jordan shifted in his seat, unsure what to say. "I'm not asking for him back," Connor continued. "But I had to see him, just once, to know he was okay." "He is," Jordan said. "We both are. Getting there, at least." Connor looked down at Rico again. "They say dogs don't remember, that it's all instinct." Jordan shook his head. "They remember." There was a long pause. Then Connor said, "Do you ever have nights where it just hits you?" Jordan didn't have to ask what he meant. "Yeah, a lot." Connor nodded slowly. "Me too." Jordan stood. "Come visit us sometime. We've got space. And Rico still remembers who you are." Connor looked up, eyes glassy. "Thanks, Hayes." As they left, Rico kept glancing back at the window, ears tilted like he wasn't quite sure what had just happened. But Jordan gave his leash a gentle tug, and the shepherd followed. Back on the road, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was full of things felt, not said. That night, Jordan sat on the porch, Rico curled beside him, the stars stretching wide above Texas. "You miss him?" Jordan asked softly. Rico didn't respond, of course. But after a moment, he rested his head on Jordan's boot. Jordan took that as a yes. "Me too." Because healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant remembering, without being destroyed by it. Life settled into something that resembled peace. Jordan got used to slow mornings, coffee on the porch, Rico at his yeed, the sun climbing over the Texas hills. He picked up some part-time work at the local fire department, trained a few pups at the community shelter, and learned to sleep again, mostly. But peace, he knew, never lasted. It was a Wednesday afternoon when it happened. He had just finished washing Rico out back, something the German Shepherd endured with a patience that made Jordan laugh every time. When his phone rang, the screen lit up with a number he didn't recognize. "Jordan Hayes?" the voice asked. "Yeah, speaking." "This is Lieutenant Harper with the 502nd Military Police Battalion. We need to talk about Rico." Jordan froze, the towel still draped over Rico's back. "What about him?" There was a pause. "You might want to sit down." Minutes later, Jordan sat at his kitchen table, phone on speaker. Rico sprawled nearby, licking his paws like nothing had changed. But everything had. "We've received intelligence linking a recent black market canine trafficking ring to several stolen military dogs," Harper explained. "And Rico's name showed up." Jordan's stomach twisted. "You think he was stolen?" "No. We believe Rico was never properly decommissioned. On paper, he's still active, which means he's technically government property and subject to recall." Jordan stood so fast, the chair scraped across the tile. "Wait, are you saying they're trying to take him back?" "It's not up to us," Harper said. "Command has flagged him for reassignment pending investigation." "No," Jordan said flatly. "That dog went through hell. He earned his rest." "I'm not disagreeing with you," Harper replied. "But if they send a retrieval team, there won't be much I can do." After the call ended, Jordan stood in the kitchen, fists clenched, heart racing. Rico watched him, sensing the change in energy. He stood slowly, came to Jordan's side, and nudged his leg with his nose. "I'm not letting them take you," Jordan whispered. The next few days were chaos. Jordan filed appeals, made calls, even contacted Connor, who, despite being in rehab, sent in a signed affidavit declaring Rico unfit for further duty. But bureaucracy moved like molasses, and the rumors came faster than the paperwork. 3 days later, a black SUV showed up outside Jordan's house. 2 officers stepped out, military police, uniforms crisp, expressions unreadable. Rico barked once, low and sharp. Jordan stood on the porch, arms crossed, refusing to move. One of the men approached. "We're here for the K9. He's not going anywhere." "We understand this is difficult," the officer said calmly, "but this is standard procedure. He's being reassigned to a base in Nevada for evaluation and retraining." Jordan's voice shook with rage. "He's not a piece of equipment." The officer's jaw tightened. "Sir, step aside." Rico stood now at Jordan's side, growling softly. His eyes darted between the officers and Jordan, sensing the tension, the threat. Jordan took a deep breath. "You want him? You'll have to go through me." What happened next surprised everyone, including Jordan. The other officer, the younger one, stepped forward. He knelt slightly, extended a hand to Rico. "Hey, boy. Easy." Rico didn't move, didn't growl, just stood still, locked in place like a statue of loyalty. "He won't go," the younger officer said quietly. "He doesn't want to." The first officer looked conflicted, then tapped his radio. "Stand by on extraction." That night, Jordan got a call. It was Harper. "They're backing off for now." The pressure from public support and Sergeant Connor's statement helped. "Rico stays with you, pending final review." Jordan hung up and sank into the porch chair, heart pounding with relief. He looked at Rico, curled beside him like always. "They tried to take you," Jordan whispered. "But they didn't understand. You're not just a dog. You're my dog." And for the first time in weeks, Jordan smiled. But deep down, he knew the fight wasn't over yet. Weeks passed. The investigation into Rico's status dragged on, buried beneath military red tape. Jordan kept working his shifts at the firehouse, but his mind was always halfway home, halfway in fear that someone, somewhere would show up and take Rico again. At night, he dreamed of explosions. Not the kind from war zones, but quiet ones. Doors slammed open, flashlights cutting through darkness, voices shouting orders as they pulled Rico from his side. He always woke up breathless, sweating, hand instinctively reaching for the dog sleeping next to him, but every time, Rico was still there. Still whole, still his. One morning, Jordan received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single-page memo stamped Keeble, confidential, and marked with a handwritten note in the corner. Thought you'd want to see this. A friend. He read it twice before the words sank in. Rico had been cleared. Fully retired. Officially transferred to civilian status. No more hearings. No more threats. Jordan stared at the page for a long time, barely breathing. Then, without a word, he walked out onto the back porch, where Rico lay stretched in the sun, eyes half closed, tail thudding lazily against the wood. He knelt and pressed the paper into Rico's side like a joke. You're free, bud. You're really free. Rico sat up, ears perked, sensing the shift in energy. Jordan laughed, actually laughed, and pulled him into a rough hug. You're mine now, he said softly. Forever. That weekend, the town held its annual Veterans Appreciation Picnic. Jordan wasn't planning to go, but the local fire chief insisted. And secretly, Jordan knew Rico could use a break too. The park was full of families, barbecue grills, folded flags, and old men in faded uniforms. Children ran through sprinklers while the mayor gave a speech no one really listened to. But when Jordan and Rico stepped onto the grass, the noise quieted. People recognized them. Someone started clapping, then another and another. Soon, the entire park was on its feet. Jordan froze, stunned. Rico, tail wagging slowly, stood tall beside him. The fire chief waved them over and handed Jordan a microphone. Say something, soldier. Jordan hesitated, gripping the mic with shaking fingers. He cleared his throat. I didn't save Rico's life because it was my job. I did it because I couldn't imagine leaving behind someone who had already given everything. He glanced down at the dog. This German Shepherd pulled people from collapsed buildings. He detected bombs. He watched his partner nearly die. And after all that, he still trusted me. A pause. Then he added, the truth is, I didn't rescue him. He rescued me. Every single day. There was silence. Then a woman near the front wiped her eyes. Applause erupted. Later that evening, as the crowd thinned and the sun dipped behind the trees, a boy approached them. Maybe 10 years old, wiry and shy, with big glasses and scraped knees. Is he a war dog? The boy asked, pointing at Rico. Jordan nodded. He was. Now he's retired. The boy knelt beside Rico, who calmly extended his paw. What's his name? Rico. The boy smiled. He looks brave. Jordan looked at Rico and nodded. He is. The boy stood up and looked Jordan in the eye. When I grow up, I want to be brave like him. Jordan smiled, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. Then just remember this. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you don't run away when it matters. That night, back at home, Jordan watched Rico curled up on the rug, breathing deeply in the comfort of safety. The scars on his body were still there, but they no longer defined him. Just like Jordan's didn't define him anymore either. He sat down beside the shepherd, leaned back, and closed his eyes. Not to escape, but finally to rest. Because the war was over. And they had both made it home. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought on distant front lines. They're faced in quiet moments, with no medals, no applause, just courage. Jordan didn't run into that burning building because it was safe. He did it because something in him refused to let go of hope. And Rico? He didn't give up, even after being left behind. He trusted again. He loved again. That's what makes stories like theirs unforgettable. Because they remind us, loyalty doesn't break, courage doesn't fade. And healing, real healing, comes when we choose each other, even in the dark. If this story touched your heart, take a second to reflect. Who would you fight for, no matter the cost? And what does home really mean to you? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe in the power of second chances, in the strength of bonds that go beyond words, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Because stories like this one, they're not just about dogs, they're about us.